business world, your loan world, it's the matrix. It's kind of a fake world. Your real world is what you said, the 4 box. Your real world is your closest friends, your family, and everything else. You plug into the matrix every single day, but it's kind of a fabricated world. And the reason why I say that is that if you left the mortgage industry, and trust me, I didn't leave the industry, but I stopped originating. Nobody remembers you, nobody cares, nobody whatever. Like seriously, right? Like these agents that I used to pine over all the time, haven't heard from them.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a select few that will wish you happy birthday and all that stuff, but this is the job, right? This is the job, but it doesn't feel like a job because we have to create relationships. It doesn't feel like a job because we have to talk to people. And so we create emotional connection with people. But mind you, it's still a job. It's still a job and we're plugging into this matrix. I mean, just imagine if we went back into old times and I had to go hunt and I came back and the villager says, did you bring in back any antelope? I'm like, no, I kind of had shooting reluctance today, right? You got to remember truly who matters and what matters.
Hey guys, Wally Elibiary. All right, so what is 24/7 mindset? Most times when you hear 24/7, you're thinking what? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just grinding, hustling. You know, I learned over time a 24-year career in mortgage and multiple other businesses that I own is unfortunately, you'll get burnt out. I became an absent father, I became an absent husband, and I became a poor business leader because I was trying to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, trying to build a business, maintain a business. When I learned how to work smarter, not just harder, by doing things the best way it could be done, instead of just simply doing my best, I learned how to work only 24 hours a week, 7 months a year, while I got paid from the business residually 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can do the same. Welcome to the show. Holy moly, we are actually doing this. So here is the one and only first 24/7 Mindset podcast live. So definitely a super cool experience, and I can't think of an easier co-host to do this with. So Mr. Khai McBride, thanks so much for joining.
Absolutely. I'm super happy to be here. It was funny when you said live, I was like, okay, I've done live before with Dave Savage. And I asked myself for a second, I says, is live more nerve wracking? And I says, well, I can tell you this, it's probably more for Wally than it is me because he's the host.
Well, it's funny. It's one of these things that, I think it's been like a year and a half maybe that we started doing these podcasts. And it's been a great journey, but man, I think it's definitely very nervous in the beginning. Then it becomes like really easy knowing that no matter what you do, it's gonna be edited out. But I like being able to, now we'll have Q&A, now we'll have questions, we'll be able to ask live, and there's more interaction of it. I think that's gonna make a bigger impact. And as I made my Facebook Live this morning, Dave Savage and I are super great buddies, great mentor. And one thing that he was very passionate about is, you can create all this content, and you do a great job of it yourself, Khai. I mean, you create all this content, get this out in the world, but if there's not interaction, they can't implement it, right? So talk to me a little bit about who is Khai McBride and why should everyone on the show care?
Wow. So I've been in the industry for a while, 25 years. I know some of you look at me and say, so you started when you're like 10, 15 years old. Asian genes, Asian don't raisin. I actually turned 52 this year. So call it good genes, and I color my hair. Otherwise, I'd be gray. But and I've been in the industry for a long time. I was brought into the industry actually by Tim Brahim, who a lot of people know. He was my original mentor. Tim and I have a lot of things in common because I have a super hyper process mentality. I think about everything in processes. I think about everything organized. Being a salesperson, extrovert was actually really foreign to me when I got into the industry. And I says, I don't know how I can do this. And Bill Hillestead, who was his partner, said, no, we can groom a process-oriented person to be successful. We can teach you how to sell. It's actually easier to teach a process-oriented person how to sell than it is sometimes a sales-oriented person to be process-oriented. And that's been a lot of my journey, is helping well, for myself, I built about an $80 million a year production business, but that was in the early 2000s. If I had to put that in today's world, that's 150 to 200 million, because that's about 250 units a year that I was doing in California, right? 2009, I transitioned into coaching, and I did both for a long time. And a lot of people came to me for those processes. What I really, really figured out is no matter how good loan officers are at sales, they just suck at processes. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I coached for the first 10 years, is just helping. And it actually wasn't struggling producers. It was big producers, helping big producers gain autonomy back. Big producers that were doing 200, 300 units a year, but they had no life. They were working 60 hours a week. They were a slave to their phone. And I was helping them create processes, create autonomy, so they can go on vacation. They can work 40 hours a week and still do 300 units a year. And then I managed a region for a bit as well, too, for a couple of years, up until 2023, when companies started to shut down. But 2023 was really the turning point, I think, in the industry and also in my career, because people were now really, really struggling with just production and survival. And so for the first time in my coaching career, I shifted into helping people with marketing and sales again. And I was helping the onesie, twosie originators really establish something. However, times have changed so dramatically. We have 4 generations that we have to deal with: boomers, Xers, millennials, and Gen Z. And there's this like confusion, because you have the old school people that are like, pick up the phone and get your coffee appointments and call your database. Then you have the new school people, which is like social media and YouTube and 24/7 podcast. But really, they're not mutually exclusive. Yeah. They can live together. And so my whole journey right now is like, can we get along? Can I get the left and the right side to like work together? Because we've got this divided mentality when, as a loan officer, you're going to deal with a 60-year-old sometimes, and sometimes you're going to deal with a 30-year-old. So I'm helping people transition into this mixed world of modern and traditional, the hybrid worlds. And that's really my passion right now. And because I'm a process-oriented person, I created a framework for it, to make it a little bit more digestible. But I think a lot of my crusade lately is getting people to see that they both work together. And the third piece, which I think is missing, which is part of, your book, is it's the mindset. I think that more so today than ever, we're more aware of mindset, the mental game. Like, you and I are Kobe Bryant fans. And that's like at least 30, if not 80% of what you should focus on is changing your mindset. Yeah. And I have a surprise for you, because you went on live today and you said, I bonded with Khai because of his Kobe Bryant jersey. So I'm going to wear that today.
Awesome.
I wore my Black Mamba Kobe jersey.
I love it. I love it.
It's funny because Kobe, for the record, I know a lot of people will be like, he's your favorite Laker of all time. I'm from LA. I said, no, Magic was actually my favorite Laker of all time.
Okay.
But mindset-wise, Mamba mentality, I've got a little poster up there. If you have Mamba mentality in the loan industry or whatever industry you're in, you're gonna do really well.
Well, my favorite thing about the Mamba mentality is the commitment, the dedication to the basics. Yeah. And I think one thing, when you look at Kobe, I love watching old videos of him and talking about, like, he would spend 6-8 hours doing such a simple move. And it was such great muscle memory that his confidence just grew, because he built a mile deep and an inch wide foundation in the basics of basketball. The same thing in mortgage, right? I think one thing that one of the proudest parts of my career that I focus on is the mile deep and an inch wide in the systems. If you've got the right systems in place, you've got the best, going from stop doing the best you can do and start doing it the best way it can be done. As I wrote my book, doing it the best way it can be done makes it so much easier to be successful, but you've got to have the systems in place. And when I think of Khai McBride, I think of systems and I think of scalability. So when you're hitting on everything exactly like I was wanting for you to hit on. So, and one thing I really love about you, Kai, is like there's so much depth to our conversations, and I think there's. I mean, you can ask me about my kids or wife or golf game or stuff like that. I'm sure that will BS about like personal stuff from time to time. But what I've enjoyed so much of our talks over the years is because they're so in depth and deep. Um, the deep schematics or the deep systems or deep steps behind the mindset. And I think when somebody tells me like, I want to be a better golfer, how do I improve? And I tell them golf is 90% mental and 10% mental. I mean, I've seen
Oh
people
yeah.
with like huge bellies and I've seen people with the big old muscles that can break par. So it's not, I mean, the physical attribute has something to do with it. Obviously, you got to have arms and legs, but you don't need a super Tiger Woods type of physique to shoot a good score. But the most unsexy part of golf is the most important thing of golf, which is course management. The most
Yeah.
unsexy thing about doing mortgages is the most important thing about doing mortgages, which is management of your time throughout the day with dollar productive activities. I think loan officers really miss that key.
Yeah. The process management, lead management, your database management. I think a lot of people, when they think about databases, they think about all the automation, but you have to manage it as well too. How you categorize. Like I was talking to somebody about databasing the other day, and they said, "Well, I have a newsletter that goes out." I said, "Well, that's lazy. You're trying to do one thing and send it out to
Yeah.
everybody. You need to. What you need to do is you need to go into your database and categorize the different people, the different avatars, which is the word that cool kids use nowadays. You got to create different avatars and then create different campaigns. But just getting very just very getting very detailed about it. You can squeeze, like if you went into the processes and you just squeezed out 10% here,
Mhm.
10% there, 10% there, all of a sudden you're 100% better. You're gonna double your production. And golf is very much the same. It's a little bit of this, it's a little bit of putting, it's a little bit of chipping, it's a little bit of course management, right? And the other thing too is that I think that there's a mindset that has to be taken, that you have to see that as fun.
Mhm.
You have to see the process as fun. I think that there's this mindset that like everything is work and the only thing that's fun is the results.
Yeah.
And if you can't find the passion in doing the things, like I love tinkering. I love experimenting. Somebody was talking to me about one of my groups that I use. I use school for one of my
Yeah.
groups. And I told them, I said, that was a complete experiment. And I change things all the time. I just want to see if things work, right? But because it's fun, because I have the mindset that I'm just out there having fun, I'm able to create business from it. And again, Kobe. He would go. They would go to games, and the team would want to go play video games. They would want to go have dinner, and Kobe says, "No, no, I'm going to go hit the gym." And they would say, "How boring." No, he enjoyed that.
Hmm.
Like he completely enjoyed working on his game, and that was just a thing for him.
Well,
I mean,
I
it
think
it, it was past.
I think you look at anybody's passion. I mean, like right now I'm like a 7 index. Yeah, but I got down to like a 2 or 3 index on my golf handicap. And when I got down at 2 or 3 handicap index, this is probably, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6 years or so ago. I loved, loved, loved practicing more than I liked playing. And
Yeah,
that's the mindset that I think the big loan officers are. If you look at the difference between $100 million producer versus a $20 million producer, the $100 million producer loves the practice, absolutely loves the script practice, loves role play, loves systems, loves models, loves technology automation. Well, the $20 million producer is still trying to win business by their personality instead of
yep,
their processes.
yep. I've got a photo here. I don't know if I can share my screen. How do I share my screen? Do I hit present?
I don't know if you can.
I don't know. Well, regardless, fun fact: in 2012, one of my clients, who's a mortgage originator, Arjun Dingra, pretty well-known name. His brother is Neil Dingra, who started the Forward Board Academy.
Okay.
Um, he is a world-class martial artist. He had a gold medal in Taekwondo, and he got it when he was about 28. So in 2012, he approached me. He says, "Hey, you're my mortgage coach, but I want to hire you to be my discipline and mindset coach because I'm now 31 and I want to get my second world gold medal. Okay. This was about a year in progress. He would check in. Now, I don't do Taekwondo. I am a martial artist, but I don't do Taekwondo. I'm a has been high school gymnast, right? But he knows that I have mama mentality. So he would check in with me. We would talk about his routine. We would do all this stuff. Anyways, in that year's time, together as a team, we won US gold, European gold, and world gold together. So that's
Wow.
actually one of my proudest coaching accomplishments is I was like the Tim Grover, if anybody has read about Lendless, I was like the Tim Grover for him, 3 gold medals. The photo that I was going to show you was him receiving his gold medal and the text message of him thanking me for that journey.
Wow.
But here's my point. Here's my point in this. And I got a tip for everybody too, because I always like to give like something tangible for people to like implement today. Think about an Olympian, how many hours they spend practicing relative to how many minutes they perform. For those 3 events, US, European, and gold, he was on the stage performing maximum of 10 minutes, but years and years and years of preparation, years and years of preparation. So the thing about us as professionals is we treat our business as if an athlete never practiced and just played the game and expect to get better.
Yeah.
And the reality is that we don't practice because I hear the complaints all the time. I'm not good with technology.
Yeah.
Well, you never practice technology. I'm not good with social media. You never practice social media. Wally, I've watched your journey. You didn't know shit about podcasting and books, online courses, funnels, click funnels. I know you didn't. You probably hired people at first like, I don't know what this is, but can you get me another direction? But you learn. And I've watched your journey and I'm like, this dude is the legitimate digital online marketer now because you practiced, right? You practiced. So
Well, I
I'm
think
gonna give every
I think one of
yeah.
the greatest things that I love sharing, which everybody just glosses over, I really hope it lands for him this time, is my favorite book of all time. It's a yellow book by Curious George, if you remember that cartoon.
Yeah.
And I just look at like so many phenomenal people in our industry. Like I was talking to Dave Savage last week, and I brought it up on live. Is like I'm like Dave, you're like the goat of digital marketing with social and YouTube and everything in nature. I'm like, talk to me about your journey and what did you learn? And like I walked away with like 3.5 pages worth of notes of stuff that he's been doing with Mortgage Coach that I'm learning from that I'm implementing in 24/7 mindset. But I had to first go humble myself to
Yeah.
Dave and say, dude, you're the bomb.com. I'm like a nobody. Like walk me through how your journey went. And when you find a mentor like that and they pour into you like that, you had Todd Duncan, you had I mean Ryan Grant was a huge buddy and a huge mentor, but and Josh Metal, all those guys and all those gals poured into Shayla Gifford poured into me so much over the years, but they would have never poured into me if I come to the table of, hey, I'm awesome at what I do.
Yeah.
This is what I'm great at. This is what what do you do? Like, and I think most loan officers unfortunately go to find mentors and they want to stick their chest out and act like they're great at what you do. I learned a long time ago it's a great puppy dog approach. Hey, I'm just coming to you as a cute little puppy dog. I need help. And can you help me? And I think
Yeah.
you look at that as like, I went and found out where the best digital marketers were in all the different spaces. And I brought that back to mortgage. And I've enjoyed so much of it because it's been fun being an amateur again.
Yeah.
And
It's
I
fun.
remember I had Renee Rodriguez come speak at a 24/7 Mindset Live event about a year ago. And the book just hit Wall Street Journal bestseller. And he was congratulating me about that. I'm like, and he goes, 2 things. I said, yeah, maybe one day I'll get to your level and go from being a Wall Street Journal bestseller to a New York Life bestseller. And he goes, comparison is a thief of joy, first of all. And I said, we had just had a launch, and it was the first launch for our course, the Client Concierge course, and the business made over like $87,000 just in the first webinar launch. And I said, dude, like I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm just trying to figure it all out along the way. And Renee said something that will stick with me forever. He said, none of us, none of us know what we're doing. and we're tinkering and improving and getting better along the way, which is exactly what you said a second ago. Having
Yeah.
the joy of tinkering, having the joy of learning new things, having the joy of being amateur again. If any loan
Mhm.
officers can take anything away from this, there's so much joy and passion and grace of looking at yourself as an amateur. This mortgage market is completely different to what any other market we've ever seen, and I've done this since 1999. Completely different. But you got to approach it as the amateur. Don't approach it as the professional that knows everything.
Well, even if you're a professional, one of Kobe's quotes was, they said, how do you treat failure? And he says, I just don't. Like, I don't really see it
Doesn't
any
process.
different. Yeah, well, yeah, he says, here's the thing: when you fail, you got to get back up,
Yeah.
right? Because if you don't get back up, you may as well just give up. He says, but here's the thing: when you succeed, you also got to get back up because somebody's gunning for your spot. So understand that even when you get to the top, you have to maintain the top, right? And so you're always pushing. And he says, so I just see myself as moving forward. But Brendan Burchard, he's
Yeah.
one of the premier mindset coaches in the world, right, next to Tony Robbins. And he said the biggest mistake that anybody can make is having absolute certainty what you're capable of. He said, because the future you don't even realize what you're capable of. Like, if you think about you today, you couldn't imagine who Wally is today 4 years ago before you started this, right? And so the Wally in 4 years in 2029 is also somebody that you cannot even imagine, you cannot even define.
Yeah.
And one of the things about people, it's human nature, we get so attached to our identities.
Mm.
And what we should really get attached to is our future possibility and what we can become. Because when somebody says I'm not good at technology, they're attaching themselves to that identity instead of saying what is the future of what I can become. And so Brendan says, I want you to be obsessed with who the future you is, which is somebody beyond what you can imagine, and every day step into that. And that unknown is scary. And Renee's right. I remember I heard this saying 15 years ago: you can tell who the pioneers are because we have the arrows in our
Yeah.
back. And I love it when somebody says this too. They like, I'll give them some innovative strategy and they'll say, well, can you show me a lot of proof that it can work? I'm like, I don't know, I just thought about it.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you be the first person to do it? Because it could work, right? Like, logically it makes sense. And there's just, it's taking yourself into that world. And so this was the tip that I was going to give people. I think there's been sort of an age old prioritization when it comes to time management, that one of the most important times of the day is like the morning, right?
Yeah.
Okay, in the morning, you got to, what is it? Eat that frog.
Yep.
You got to win by noon. You got to crank out your sales calls. To me, highly important, but I think that's the second most important time block in the day. The first important time block in the day, and depending on when you do it, is I like from about 3 o'clock to X. It could be 3 to 6, it could be 3 to 8, it could be 3 to 9. That's my practice zone. That's my tinker zone. Because by 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, the chaos is done. You've messed with your loans, you've messed with your sales calls. I got the end of the day, I'm going to dig into my Go High Level CRM. I'm going to dig into my social media. I'm going to practice my social media. That's when you develop. It's the practicing, because just like that that win by noon, well, that's the game. But Kobe didn't develop his skills in the game. He developed his skills actually after the game. You ever see him lose and then he goes and practices for 2 more hours shooting?
100%.
That's the time.
Yeah.
And I think that right now, everybody here has a deficit of something, whether it's a deficit in sales, a deficit in skill. And if you prioritize that 3 to 6, and the other reason why I like it at the end of the day is that when you're on a roll, just keep going till 8, keep going till 10. Prepare that script so that your calls the next day will be better. Practice the video so when you go live, it'll be better. Learn the CRM so when you execute it the next day, it'll be better. That, to me, that preparation, that practice is the most important time block. And I think that'll change more people's lives, because you can do the morning grinding and it'll burn you out. And it'll partially burn you out because you're doing it the same way every single time. But that later time block, you'll evolve.
Yeah. I think it's so when you were, I guess you said Brahim was the first mentor that you came in. I think we need to talk a little bit about that. And the reason I say that is I saw Dave Savage is phenomenal at YouTube and Mortgage Coach. Like he's like I said, he's like the goat of that digital marketing space. So what did I do? I said, "Hey Dave, I'm going to spend the next 30 days. Actually, it was probably like 2 weeks. I'm going to spend the next 2 weeks watching. I'm going to go consume about 20 hours of content of how to do the best podcast in the world, best practices of podcasts in the world." So I put together like a page and a half of the questions. I think it was like 15, 20 questions. And I said, "Hey, I'm going to send this to you beforehand. I'm going to prioritize the list of questions that I want to ask you. And if I do that and put in 20 hours worth of work and also prioritize a list of my questions, can I have 30 minutes of your time and you walk me through the answers to my questions?" He said, "Yeah, hell yeah, absolutely." So I sent that to him, did my 20 hours with the YouTube content of how to do the best podcasts. And I sent it to him and I prioritized, it was like 13 questions. He got on the Zoom with me and he knocked out like the first 9 questions. Boom, 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 boom. They're all like brilliant answers, stuff that I would have never known. But where I think most people fail is they go to a mentor and say, "Hey, mentor, I've done no prep work. I've done no legwork. I don't have my questions prioritized, nor do I have them written out. But can you have a coffee with me?" And so when as like a huge mortgage Mount Rushmore type of person as like Tim Brahim, how do you get Tim Brahim to spend time with you to mentor you in this space?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of a cheat code because I knew Tim Brahim when I was a tech guy,
Okay.
and so when the tech crashed, him and Bill Hill said,
Yeah.
"Really?" So Tim Brahim, so really, uh, Bill was my mentor, but Bill molded Tim, and so he molded me in the eyes of Tim. And when Loan Toolbox came out, I had direct access to Tim because of that and because of our friendship. But here's an interesting story. I think no matter whether you know somebody or not, I've been a Kobe Bryant fan for a long time. I've been a season ticket holder for 20, almost 28 years now. And I actually went to his funeral procession at SoFi Center, at Staples, which is now Crypto. And I heard Michael Jordan talk. And Michael Jordan used to talk about when Kobe came into the league. Number one, Kobe saw Jordan as a mentor. There was nobody closer to Jordan's game and Kobe Bryant. And I say that because when you have a mentor, is it really a mentor? Is it somebody that you want to get ideas from? Because that's not really a mentor. A mentor is somebody that you also you want to become, right? Because a lot of people that come
Mhm.
up to me like, "Oh, Kai, you're kind of a mentor to me," and I'm like, "Am I really a mentor to you, or just do I inspire you every single time?" Because if I was a mentor to you, you probably like, I say jump, you say how high. You know what I mean? You're gonna start wearing Kobe Bryant shirts. You're gonna start to kind of live in that. But that was Kobe. He really wanted to be Jordan, and what he would do is Jordan would say, "Yeah, it was weird during a game." During timeout, he would ask me, "How do I do the fadeaway jumper?" He would text me, and he said this in his, if you watch his 10-minute eulogy, he said, "Kobe was a pest getting information from me, and he was annoying at first, but I started to respect him for admiring me and wanting to be like me." And I think part of the barrier is some people are even afraid to approach the mentor.
Yeah.
But if you uh, approach them with the respect and the preparation that you did with Dave and what Kobe did with Jordan, and even you're correct, what I did with Tim,
Yeah.
because there were a lot of people in Loan Toolbox that were asking him questions, but I was doing the work. I was doing the work.
Yeah.
I think that if you show somebody that, like, I'm not going to waste your time, I'm going to do the work, and I want to earn bugging you, I think that there's this innate uh, need inside of us to pass on our legacy to somebody
Mhm.
else.
Yeah.
And if you can connect to that, which Dave wants to pass on to you, it makes him feel good about himself.
Yeah. I think also I started doing this back in, I think it was like 2012. I looked up and I didn't have many mentors and I was super limited in my wisdom, knowledge, experience. I was just a loan officer working inside of a branch. Wasn't even a branch manager back then. And I started trying to educate myself and I started reading a book a week. And it was I'm ADD, ADHD, I'm dyslexic, and I have dysgraphia. So the way I have to read is I've got to listen to the audiobook and follow along on my finger. And if I'm only
Yeah.
listening to the audiobook, I'm going to daydream about something else. If I'm just following along my finger, I'm going to read the same paragraph 9 times
Yeah.
and not register any of it. So I listened to the audiobook, and one thing I learned this from Michael Mayer, and it was he wrote the book Seven Levels of Communication. And he said when he reads a book, he studies the book. And what he taught me was when you read a book, have a journal right next to you. In the journal, you've got asterisks for ahas that you learn, and you've got open boxes, like square boxes that you want to check off of tasks you want to implement. And he gave me that idea. So I started reading books that way. Then I had all these great wisdom and ideas from these authors, but like I needed a way to organize it. So then I took on the idea, okay, how do I organize this? Okay, I'm going to grab three highlighters. One that's green, one that's yellow, and one that's red. Green is what I want to accomplish in the next 30 days. Yellow is what I want to accomplish in the next 60 days. And red is what I want to accomplish in the next 90 days. And I started putting together this list of a prioritized list of what I learned and where I want to improve and such from there. Which what was super cool about that is that started morphing me reaching out to the authors. So the reason why I've got like Eric Thomas and I were good mentors, or he's a great mentor to me, John Maxwell, Gary Vee, all these great mentors that have given me the time of day that have poured into me over the years is because I've read their book. I mapped out every single aha that I had on there, and then everything I wanted to implement, and I prioritized it, and I emailed it to them, or I sent them a private Facebook message with it and said, "Hey, I've just read your book. I absolutely loved it. Here's how I studied your book. I would love to have 15, 20 minutes of your time. Here are the questions I have about how to implement what I learned from your book." And it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing when these authors, I'd probably say 35, 40% of the time, they wouldn't even respond, or they tell me to go pound sand, or sure, I'll coach you, but it's a $10,000 per hour thing or whatever. But it was, I'd say 50, 60, 70% of the time, they'd give me the time of day, and I'd do a 15-minute Zoom with them or whatever the case is, and build a relationship. And hey, I'd love to have more of your time. What's your favorite donate? What's your favorite foundation that I can donate time to or money to be able to earn more of your time? But the biggest thing I wanted to kind of share out there is what you did also. You put in the legwork to show Tim Brahim that you're doing the work. Tim Brahim bent over backwards to mentor and coach you. Dave Savage, Todd Duncan, all these great mentors in our mortgage world have bent over backwards to help invest in me because I've showed them that I've studied their content.
Yeah. Dave is another one, huge mentor of mine since 2006. And I pour into him by helping push the mortgage coach community, Trust Engine. I was one of the OG speakers back in the
Yeah.
day. You know, what's really interesting is that you have to have a little bit of boldness and brashness, a little
Yeah.
bit too. So fun fact, how I met Dave was I met him at the event, and he kind of knew me through Tim Brahim, and I critiqued him. It was kind of funny. I said, it was essentially along the line of, do you know what's wrong with Mortgage Coach? I said, do you know what I would do to improve Mortgage Coach? Because back then I said Mortgage Coach was a really cool point of sale
Yeah.
system. But I said, I use Mortgage Coach for marketing. He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, you're probably using a point of sale. Like you're talking to a client, you're saying, here's your presentation. I says, no, I'm actually creating TCAs. I'm creating samples, and then I'm sending it out to my database for marketing. I use it as like a really cool marketing tool. And he looked at me and goes, why has nobody ever said that to me before? So I looked at him and says, yeah, your product would be a lot better if you did that. You know what I mean? But like, it was showing a little bit of, the thing about really successful people is that, to get their attention, you have to challenge their minds a little bit
Mm-hmm.
too. And also one thing, if you ever want to approach somebody, is that they're very, very proud of their journey. And so when you present them with a challenge, you say, I want to get to where you are, but I'm a little stuck here. How did you overcome
Yeah.
that? And people really want to talk about that. They want to share that with you. They're more open to sharing, getting over the difficulties. Like if I called you, Wally, and I said, hey, I've seen you grow 24/7 mindset, but you probably had a lot of landmines along the way. That must have been really difficult. And I would love, and I'm experiencing the same thing right now. That's going to captivate your attention versus what I said. Hey man, I see 24/7 mindset. I want to be just like you. Can you give me like really cool tips to be
Yeah.
successful? It's like a different vibe,
Yeah.
right? Um, so having people go through the challenges, I always find that when you can literally be having lunch with the richest person and you look at them and you say, so when was a time that you think that you really weren't going to make it? I want to hear that
Yeah.
story. Everybody loves telling their story. I remember when I met Tim, he told me about this one story during the Northridge earthquake when he thought he was gonna like me, like he thought he was gonna die. And we love telling those stories, right? The war stories.
We're playing golf in a father and son tournament at Merido here. I think it was like maybe I don't know, like a month ago, and we were paired with another father and son. And my oldest son is 19; he's about to be 20. He's a freshman at Arkansas, and we're paired with a guy and his son. He's graduated UT, and we play the round and just hit it off. And this guy is like talking to Braden, my son, the whole entire time. This other member, and he's just giving him wisdom after wisdom after wisdom. And I grew his company and scaled it and exited it. And I get on, like, we finished the 18th hole, and I'm like, Braden, my gut tells me that dude's a billionaire. I don't think he's a millionaire. I think he's a billionaire. And he goes, yeah, Dad, I Googled him on the ninth hole. Like it finally clicked on the 18th, and he goes, yeah, I Googled him on the ninth hole, and he sold his company for $6.7 billion. And we go into the clubhouse to have lunch afterwards, and he comes over, sits at the table next to me, sits at the table and says, hey, I'd love to join you guys for lunch. And he starts talking to us. I'm like, dude, I'd love to hear your story. He's talking about how he almost went bankrupt and how the business almost took under, and how he had a drop out of high school, and all this stuff, and he's going through it. And what was super cool about it was he cared to spend the next hour and a half of his day on a Saturday that he could have been home with his family to pour into me and my son. And now he's become a good buddy, and we're talking about going to Riviera together and playing golf out there in your neck of the woods. But it was really cool to see he cares so much to give so much wisdom. But I first had to show him that I wasn't there trying to be a groupie. I was there trying to be a better father and a better husband and a better professional by learning from his mistakes.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, listen, you've coached, you've mentored, you've led a lot of people, and the ones that you give more attention to are the ones that you see them putting some effort in
Yeah.
and doing the work, right? They're not just asking for information. You know, the interesting thing about reading books, and I have my take on reading books, is that if you read a lot of books to say, I've read the book,
Yeah.
and you got a lot of knowledge and you don't do anything, it doesn't do any good. I'm notorious for not finishing books.
Mm.
And I don't finish them because I couldn't finish the book. I don't finish them because if by chapter 7 I've read enough that inspires me to implement, I just stop reading the book and I just implement. You know, Tony Robbins, which is interesting, is that he said books really don't have to be in order. What Tony does is he'll read, instead of saying, I want to read 10 books, and he'll read one book at a time, he says, I'll read chapters out of the 10 books. I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with opening up a book, looking at a chapter, and going to the most interesting chapter and reading that and getting something out of it.
Yeah.
I think we need to redefine how we learn things and implement things, because there's the knowledge to implementation gap. And most people have a huge knowledge to implementation gap. And they have a huge knowledge to implementation gap because they're trying to read the whole book. And so by the time they take the time, it's like they're so focused on finishing the book versus just read all the really cool stuff that inspires you. Go do it and you'll close it.
Yeah.
You know, read chapter 4, 6, and 7. It's not like a movie where you got to watch the whole thing, you got to experience the whole thing, right? And so that's the one thing. And I'm just like you, and I learned that from Hermosi. I get the Kindle and I listen to the Audible while I'm watching the Kindle, because sometimes I'll drift off, but I'm still listening, or sometimes I'm not even listening, but I'm still reading. And then I use the different highlighters and different colors, and then I actually have some note taking that I start writing.
But
and then I get so inspired, I don't finish the book and I just implement.
the biggest thing that I want everybody to take away from that is it's a system. It's a process, right? There is. I bet you do that on every single book. I bet you don't finish any books. I bet you start implementing at chapter 2 or 9 or 14, whatever. But it's a system that works for you. And listeners out there, the biggest thing I want you to understand is my way is not the right way. Kai's way is not the right way. But figure out what your way is. And you might take 5% of mine, 20% of Kai's, and figure it out from there. I needed to expand my horizon of who was pouring into me. So then I can take bits and pieces from other entrepreneurs, and create who I wanted to become. That's what
Mm-hmm.
mentorship means to me.
Hormozy really simplified it. He said, don't overcomplicate things. What you do is it requires you have to do enough volume for one thing. You have to do something at least 10 times.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're going to read a book, read at least 10 books. Then out of the 10 books, ask yourself, what is the 10% that worked the best? Like which method of reading the book worked the best? Was it at nighttime? Was it audio? Was it this? And then take that and now do it that way 10 times.
Yeah.
And then out of the second iteration, you do it again. Because especially when you're innovating, a lot of the paths that I see you forging, Wally, a mortgage originator has not done. So you may have some mentors that you're going to fragment from different industries, but you're still blazing a path yourself. And so you have to try something yourself 10 times. You're going to eliminate the 9 and you're going to say, I'm going to keep repeating the 10. Now I'm going to do that 10 times. And you just do iterations of more and more and more. And that's ultimately how you create a system. Tim Brahim, the most systematic thing he ever taught me was you have to write down your loan process. And we're talking 150 to 200 steps, not some 20-step checklist, like a full blown. And people ask me all the time, can I copy yours? I'm like, I mean, you can, but it's not your process.
Yeah.
It's not your company. It's not how you do loans.
Yeah.
Right. So you just got to start with something and then use it.
Yeah.
And then improve it.
My advice was always grab 3 loan officers' best perfect process, study all 3, and then pull out what's best for you. But I'm curious about a question. I don't know how to ask this, but like I feel like I'm behind all the time.
Okay, yeah.
And when you say you're a pioneer or whatever you said a second ago, I'm like, dude, I suck at this, I suck at that, I can improve here, I can do this, and I feel like I'm behind all the time. Elaborate on what do you mean there? Because like sometimes I just feel like I'm in last place every day.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is perspective, right? So here's the first thing that I'm going to say to all people that have ambition. You're always going to feel behind because you're always going to raise the bar. And so the only reason why you feel behind is that you raise the bar. If you didn't raise the bar and if you didn't feel behind, then Wally would feel complacent because complacency means there's no more room for growth. So I don't think you're ever going to not feel behind. And I think that everybody listening and watching has to understand that feeling behind and never finishing are 2 traits of being ambitious, period. There's never a finish line. And so if you can just accept that.
Yeah.
But, I think what the interesting take that you make is because for a mortgage originator, relative to what we've done in the mortgage industry, because I think the mortgage industry is kind of behind, you're ahead.
Yeah.
But then what happens is you're ambitious and you look out into the digital world, into the online world, which is another lesson. Do not confine yourself to learning just from mortgage people. Mm-hmm. You can learn from the other millionaires, the billionaires, the business owners. I almost do everything that I can not to learn from originators, as a matter of fact, because you just open yourself up for more ideas and more opportunity. And that's the other reason why you feel behind, because you're like, because see, I compare you to like what other originators or former originators did, but you may be looking at Russell Brunson and being like, I'm so far behind. Of course.
Yeah. Hormozy, Brunson, Robbins. I'm like, but I like it's so much. It's so funny because like, I don't, I don't know if this is a good thing or bad thing, but it's an honest thing. I don't celebrate my successes, and people say all the time, like, you got to celebrate your successes. And to me, I think it reminds me of what Kobe said. And once it was a speech he gave, and he talked about, we're not here to accept an award. And he goes, we're not here to accept this award because of like, this was the finish line. The award is the 6 months, 9 months, 6 years, 10 years of journey to get to here. And I feel like I don't sit there and celebrate an accomplishment, because I'm celebrating along the way, and I'm falling in love with the practice that I'm doing along the way to improve. I'm falling in love with the person that I'm becoming. I'm falling in love with the process. I'm falling in love with the steps, not the finished product. And if you keep not falling in love with the finished product and fall in love with the process, you become a process-oriented person. And when you said a second ago, one of my favorite books of all time is called E-Myth. And it's not necessarily because the book was so great. The book opened my mind to a whole new world out there. And the first time I read it was, I think it was like 2013, 2014. And I found out there's E-Myth for entrepreneurs. There's E-Myth for
Mhm.
plumbers. There's E-Myth for real estate agents, E-Myth for mortgage people, E-Myth for insurance people, E-Myth for chiropractors. And the list went on. I think there's like 20 of them. And I started learning how to build a scalable business for a chiropractor. I started learning how to build a scalable business for a CPA. I started learning how to build a scalable business that you can sell for an electrician. Did I want to go in those fields? Absolutely did not want to go in those fields. But I learned little bits and pieces from different industries, which made me go from $100 million in loans to 150 to $200 million in loans and write the book. It's learning from other industries, which I think most loan officers have this like blinders on, and they don't explore other industries to be able to learn from.
The E-Myth is actually my number one business book of all time.
Yeah.
It was introduced to me by Bill Hillstead, I want to say like in 96. And for those of you that haven't read it, I'll give you the short version. There's a difference between being self-employed and being an entrepreneur. I think a lot of originators feel self-employed because you've given yourself a job. You're working for yourself and you're giving yourself a job. So what do? You show up and you do the work, and you're actually your worst boss. I mean, you're probably taking loan applications on a weekend, right? I work 24/7, that whole thing, not your 24/7, but the regular 24/7. But a true entrepreneur, again, works on their
Yeah.
business. A true entrepreneur is working toward autonomy. I had somebody in one of my communities say, any solo brokers out there, how do you deal with going on vacation? And my response was,
Yeah.
I think this year your goal should not be a solo broker.
Yeah.
And somebody responded, that was like the best answer, because we have the ability to kind of forge any path, pave any path that we want to, and so create a business that works for you. And autonomy is one of my biggest motivators, is because autonomy is the key to scaling,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you cannot scale a business if you max yourself out on hours. And so the only way to not max yourself on hours is you have to create an autonomous business that can function without you. And for an autonomous business to function without you, it requires one of two things. You either automate it or you delegate it to a person. And so you look at everything that you do, even the supposed, but nobody can talk to a borrower like me. Somebody can talk to a borrower just like you. You can delegate that out. And now you have AI. AI is crazy because that's almost like the automated delegation into a robot now.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the key. So you got to look at your business and say, if I'm maxed out on time, what can I automate and what can I delegate? And I think a lot of people struggle with that because they say, well, I tried to help somebody with that, but it didn't work. This is how most people train staff. When I taught my daughters how to drive, if I trained my staff the way I would have taught them how to drive, they'd be dead, because this is what I would have done. All right, I'm going to drive around a little bit, just shadow me a little bit, and then I'll give you the car and you're good. And then they're going to crash and I'm going to yell at them. It's like, no, I handheld them through turning left, turning right, parking lot, meticulously through every single thing. You're only as good as you are because you went through that, but people are so impatient training. So then people say this, I don't like training people. Again, it's a mindset. Training is not just something that you do. It's really one of the keys to being a leader. And if you want to be successful, you have to acquire a leadership mentality. And a leadership mentality means mentoring and training people. Because otherwise, what kind of a parent? I see you, Wally, with your son, and I'm sure there's a lot of mentoring and leadership out there on the golf course. I think he's he's already beaten you once or twice,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, right? He's like getting there. But you have to embrace that. And when you embrace that, you realize that I'm actually working on my business because I'm creating freedom by pouring into this person. And the more you say, I don't want to train this person, the more you're accepting the fact that you're doing the work and you're being self-employed.
Yeah.
And I don't trust them, so I'm just going to do it myself. Okay, we'll keep going down that rabbit hole and never scaling.
Yeah, I think it was. I put this in my book, and one of the best advice was from a previous teammate, and his name was Neil. He had so much wisdom, and I had such a big ego back then. And he thank God he cared to pour into me. And I was trying to recruit loan officer assistants or production partners for Team Wally, and he's like, well, how's recruiting coming along? I said, dude, freaking sucks. I can't find anybody as good as me. And he did not say, well, you're full of baloney. He said, can you find people half as good as you? And I'm like, yeah, they are everywhere. There's a ton of people half as good as me. He goes, great. If you find two people that are half as good as you and hire those two people, they can do as much as you can do, or they can do the job roles you can do. And he goes, if you hire three, you can multiply your business by 1.5%. What he didn't tell me that I learned over time is when I hired three production partners, perfect math, 2013, I was in $36 million in fundings. 2015, just 2 years later, after I hired three production partners to train them up. I do it, we do it, they do it. Just like you said a second ago, we go from 36 million to 81 million in just 24 months. Then we broke 100 million in 2016, and Team Wally's blown up since then. But I had to learn to reduplicate myself. For me to reduplicate myself, I had to humble myself, and I had to figure out what I did that made me special. And it was something that Todd Duncan taught me, and he said the 55-5 rule. Work for 55 minutes, write what you did for 5 minutes. Work for 55 minutes, write what you did for 5 minutes. Do that for a full day. You've got every single model, system, and steps that it takes to do a lead app, a high trust call, a lock call, the process, how to talk to a realtor or prospect, and all the steps are broken down. If you work for 55 minutes, write down what you did for 5 minutes.
I love that. That's actually a really great question. You can probably really connect with a very successful person is if you ask them this question: at what point in time did life or business humble you and take your ego down, that you had to take yourself down to here in order to rebuild yourself up to there? You know, I mean, I bet you if you ask that question over dinners, I could ask you that question the next time we see each other in North Carolina, and you probably have a good story with that. Because I look back and, man, when I was young in my 30s and doing 80 million years originator, man, I thought I was just like the shit. And I look back and I laugh. Oh my God, what an asshole I was. You know what I'm saying? And now I'm just like this humble dude. Like, oh man, I can help you. I was there. I try to be modest about things. But I think everybody has to go through that journey a little bit. But here's the thing. I don't think that we choose ego. Again, we don't choose ego because we want to show off. Remember, our ego is actually there to protect us. Okay. But I think what everybody has to understand is that your ego will overprotect you. Mm-hmm. And what's happening right now is a lot of you won't grow because your ego is saying you're good enough. You don't need to change. It's not doing that to limit you. It's actually doing that to prevent you from feeling bad about yourself. But if you can accept the fact that growth is a better place, your ego will back down a little bit and you'll say, no, I don't have to feel perfect. I have to feel like growth. And Brendan Burchard talks about this. One of the biggest human needs is to feel growth. And when you feel growth, you're gonna get a lot more fulfillment than the ego containing you and holding on to that. Another one of my favorite books is I want to say it's A Whole New World, but that sounds very Aladdin. But it's by Eckhart Tolle. A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. Okay. And it's basically the Eckhart Tolle version of I think an old Chinese scripture, but it basically talks about the ego. I think that if a lot of you are struggling right now with growth, know that your ego is in the way to protect you. I want you to read A New Earth. And if you learn to set your ego aside and walk into growth, and what you said on today's live, walk into being okay with hatred, being disliked, being all those things, and just realize it's a part of the process. You'll let go. So that's definitely a book recommend. You know, I wanted to address it just because you said on live, we talk about it. Like what is it like to be hated? You know, it was really interesting. I used to watch Kobe, and a lot of our experiences with people is kind of like in hindsight. Because I want to say for the record, while he was still playing, and by the way, I specifically wore number 8 because number 8 was the hated Kobe. 24 was the light Kobe. When he was number 8, there were times as a Laker fan, I was like, we need to trade this dude. He's not passing the ball. He's gonna push Shaq out. Yeah. I like Shaq. But after reading Relentless by Tim Grover, you started to learn that Kobe actually didn't think about whether he was liked or not. That was just a byproduct of him doing what he did. people ask him all the time. He goes, there was actually an interview. He goes, come on, man. It's like, what are you going to do? We're all different people. You're going to like me. I'm going to like you. You're not going to like me. You're not going to like you. I don't think about that. I just go after my goal. He didn't even like when he would make those crass comments at the, after the interview, you would think he's just trying to be an asshole. He wasn't.
Yeah.
He was just speaking his mind. That was it. And I think Gary Vaynerchuk is one of the hugest fans of Hormozi. Says it too. Is like your life will explode when you stop thinking about what people will think about you. But I think what's important is what you said. As long as you're not manipulating, deceiving, and doing something for the worst. I had a conversation one time. I was going after a real estate agent, and I realized that the real estate agent in the past was working with one of the loan officers at my company. But then I asked him, he's like, yeah, that guy hasn't called me in 4 years though. So I go, okay, so green light. Sure enough, that loan officer finds out, says, what are you doing? This is my agent. And I'm like, you haven't talked to him in 4 years. Well, the president of the company brings us in. We're just arguing over the whole thing. Then finally that loan officer looks at me and says, whatever, you can have them. When you fail, I'll take, just whatever, kind of petty, but it was fighting. He walked out and I stayed. And then I looked at the president of the company. You know what he said? He looked at me and he goes, you know what makes me happy? I said, what? He said, the fact that the two of you care enough to fight over this agent, because there's a lot of people that are complacent. I actually like the fact that you put yourself in a position that you can fight for somebody. And that's a thing. It's like, if the difference between getting hate and not getting hate is the difference between doing something versus doing nothing, I'm going to choose fighting and hate versus doing nothing and being complacent. And that's what he said to me.
Yeah, I think if more people adopted, and my wife, this is probably the least favorite thing my wife thinks of me is, she'll tell me stories about such and such, and I'm like, I don't care. The reason I don't care is something I call the 4-wall rule. If you're inside the 4 walls of my house, I care what you think of me. If you're inside the 4 walls of my house, you have an opinion of what my day should look like. If you're inside the 4 walls of my house, then you've got a clear understanding of like what my future is going to hold, and you're going to help shape that. If you're outside the 4 walls of my house, I could care less what you say about me, what you think about me, anything out there. It's not necessarily because I'm being a jerk about it, but I am a provider for who's the 4 walls in my house. And I'll share one more story, then I want to have you give like the closing thoughts. And it was back when 24/7 Mindset hit the Wall Street Journal bestseller, Amazon bestseller. And I went out, and what did I do? Before I launched the book, I went out and studied, and I read books and watched YouTube videos how to become a bestseller. And there's like multiple different strategies out there. And I remember when it hit bestseller and I was celebrating the Wall Street Journal bestseller, I get a social media post that I saw that was sent to me by somebody trolling and was talking about how, you can buy your way onto the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. I'm like, buy your way? Yeah. What do you think? I hacked into the Wall Street Journal and like Googled my way how to hack into that to them. And I'm like, no, you can't. But all I did was I grabbed the link and the YouTube link of the video I watched, and there's 3 types of ways to become a Wall Street Journal bestseller: selling books, selling audiobooks, and selling ebooks. It's really not that complicated, and you got to sell 16,000 within your first week period launch. So what did I do? I reached out to like 35, 38 different CEOs of mortgage companies, and I said, hey, I want you to buy my ebook, but I want you to buy it only during this 1 week. And when you buy my ebook, and how many loan officers have? 1,000 loan officers. Okay, I want you to buy 1,000 copies. What I'm going to do in return is give you these 1,000 courses, completely digital copies. I'm going to come in and do once a quarter. I'm going to do a webinar for your 1,000 loan officers. And like 27 of the 38 CEOs purchased 1,000 here, 2,000 here, 3,000 here, and they all purchased in that 1 week. And we blew it out. I think it was like 24,000 ebooks sold in the first week that it launched, and it hit the bestseller list by Wall Street Journal. But all it was a process. All it was a model. But
regardless of what he said, he could say, see, but you manipulated it. But it's not the CEO bought 1,000 books for himself. He bought it for every single loan officer. So they're being put to use. Yeah. People are reading it, right? and you're still doing everything with the right
Yeah, but I think what
intentions.
most people though, especially new authors like myself, you could have easily taken that as hatred. You could have easily taken that as, okay, yeah, I did something wrong. No, it's a model, it's a system. And, have you ever read The 4 Hour Work Week? Yeah,
Yes, one of my favorites.
phenomenal book, right? Tim is just a genius and a half. But it talks about how he wanted to be the martial artist of the world or whatever, but he realized if you push somebody out of the circle, you automatically win a point. And it was a lot of loan officers that I want to make sure that gets out there, and I want you to have the last word they limit themselves, they pull themselves back because their fear of looking like a fool, their
Yeah, yeah.
fear of being shamed by others. Every single
Mhm.
situation I go into, I tell myself I'm the amateur. I don't know what I'm doing. This is completely new, and I'm just going to go learn. I think it's the biggest difference. So, all right,
Yeah.
give me the last closing minute wisdom from Khai McBride for all the loan officers listening.
If you've ever watched the movie The Matrix, it talks about Neo and Keanu Reeves, and that he lives in a fake world. Like we live in this fake world called the Matrix. Okay, the real world is when you unplug from the Matrix, and he's with these kind of refugees. Okay, so I use that analogy when I coach with people, is that your business world, your loan world, it's the Matrix. It's kind of a fake world. Your real world is what you said, the 4 box. Your real world is your closest friends, your family, and everything else. You plug into the Matrix every single day, but it's kind of a fabricated world. And the reason why I say that is that if you left the mortgage industry, and trust me, I did. I didn't leave the industry, but I stopped originating. Nobody remembers you. Nobody cares. Nobody whatever. Like seriously, right? Like these agents that I used to pine over all the time, haven't heard from them.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a select few that will wish you happy birthday and all that stuff,
Yeah.
but this is the job, right? This is the job. But it doesn't feel like a job because we have to create relationships. It doesn't feel like a job because we have to talk to people. And so we create emotional connection with people. But mind you, it's still a job. It's still a job. And we're plugging into this matrix. I mean, just imagine if we went back into old times and I had to go hunt and I came back and the villager says, "Did you bring in back any antelope?" I'm like, "No, I kind of had shooting reluctance today," right? You got to remember truly who
Yeah.
matters and what matters. And everything else is kind of an accessory to get you to your goal. And that doesn't mean you're going to manipulate people and do all the stuff. You're going to still treat people kind, but you know, at the end of the day, who are you hanging out with on the weekends? Who really cares about you? And we're just out there doing what we can. I mean, we'll embarrass ourselves sometimes. We'll make fool of ourselves in front of agents and everything. But your closest friends don't care about that. Your wife is not going to judge you because you made a fool out of yourself on your podcast. So I always use the term, it's the
Yeah.
matrix. And just know the difference between the real world and the career path that you've chosen.
Brilliant.
And I think that's a big thing.
Absolutely brilliant, bud. All right. Well, hey, first of all, thank you for being our first live guest. And you did not disappoint one bit. Absolutely loved your impact. I love the depth of your words, and just super excited that our friendship's growing. And I'm pumped about next month, man. North Carolina, we'll play a little golf and a bunch of the Mortgage Cup, and hopefully I get invited back the following year.
Yep. And also, really quickly, anybody want to follow me on social, want to see what I'm doing? Super easy to remember. Connect with Khai, KHAI, connectwithkai.com. That'll take you to my main Linktree account. Whether you want to see my websites, schedule a call with me, it'll show you all my Instagram, Linktree, Facebook. I would love anybody that listened, at a minimum, just connect with me, say hi, say I saw you on Wally's podcast, and anything else more. You want to set a call with me, or you want to check out my website, what I do. I'd love that too.
And we'll drop all that in below of all the contact info. All right, Khai. Appreciate you, brother. We'll see you soon, man.
All right. I'll see you in a couple weeks, bud.
Bye bye. So thank you so much for listening today. It means a lot you took time out of your day. I don't take that lightly. Understand very clearly that you're very busy. With that being said, if you want to continue your journey and learn more about 24/7 mindset, if you're on Facebook, which I'm going to guess you are, then go to 24/7 Mindset on Facebook and join the private community. I do coaching tips on there on a daily basis, but from scripts on there to systems on there, models, and the ability to be able to grow and scale a business while you have a quality of life. Hope to see you there.